imagine that you have a job, and this job is the same over and over again. And you do this job for 15 years, or just over and over again. Now, imagine that this job is turning on a light if you see something is wrong with something else. Over the course of 15 years of you working there, nothing was wrong at all. You sat and did nothing for 15 years, and it was very boring, of course. It sounds like to me this is why we invented computers, to avoid boring jobs and annoying things like this. Now, the first computer was not even a real electrical computer at all. It was the term computer meant that you were a person that performed mathematical calculations. And so the first computer could be traced back to the first trade, which was in Mesopotamia in 4,500 BC. Now, these people weren't very advanced, so counting chickens and rocks was enough for them, of course. But the next advancement was all the way back in 300 BC, when the Babylonians invented the abacus, a tool that aided you in counting, adding, multiplying, and subtracting. Now, this tool was pretty advanced and it helped people a lot, but it wasn't very good, just because it's not very advanced. But the next advancement was quite good, and it was used by NASA engineers to land a man on the moon. It was called the slide rule, and it would help you divide, multiply, add, subtract, whatever you needed. And yeah, like I said, it helped NASA engineers land a man on the moon. It helped them do the calculations. Now, the average computer was a person that did mathematical calculations, so they had the abacus and the slide rule, but that was it, and people decided that it was very boring to just sit there and do calculations. So, and if you messed up, the results would be catastrophic, because, like, the mathematical, if you're just a little bit off, it'll throw the whole thing off a crap load. Now, the first electrical computer was actually built by Harvard and IBM when they combined forces, and they made the Harvard Mark I. Now, this computer was very unreliable. It had 500 miles of wire, and it weighed 5 tons, and had a 50-foot rotating shaft attached to a 5-horsepower engine. It ran every day, and it was very slow, and the military noticed this, and they needed a faster computer for calculating artillery tables and firing stuff and for their other weapons to do the mathematical calculations. And so they invested $500,000 in 1945 to a man named John Eckert. Now, John Eckert, he partnered up with another man named John Mahlke, and together they made the ENIAC, which was the first substantial computer. It had much more power, and it was faster, only because they used 18,000 vacuum tubes. A vacuum tube was a 10-centimeter in length tube that was very big. So the size of this computer was like 4 football fields combined. Very giant, and it weighed 50 tons. Yeah. After that, of course, the military invested $500,000. But it took them a year and 18 months to complete, so the war was over, and so instead they used the ENIAC to complete the calculations to create the hydrogen bomb, which wasn't much better either. But the ENIAC still was a great computer, and it was a very big step. And also during this time, Apple, a famous computer company, made their first computer, and they called it the Apple I, selling it $600 because the prices of the computers were so high for a personal computer because of the hand assembly and the amount of wire and technology that went into it. And so every computer had to be insanely expensive, especially back in 1960s when $5 was, you could buy a wagon, and that was basically a car. Past this, after this, the computers kept advancing and advancing, and people wanted an explanation, so a man named Gordon Moore, which was a businessman around 1960, he came up with this rule called Moore's Rule, and it stated that every 2 years, the number of transistors used in the computer will double, and a transistor was basically something that would increase the speed and processing power of a computer. This explains why the average cell phone has more computer power than the spaceship that landed the man on the moon, like way back then. This also explains why the average PlayStation 3, a console that many people have, which costs $300, has almost the same amount of computer power as the military supercomputer in 1997, which cost several $million. Moore's rule was very advanced, and a transistor was basically, it replaced the vacuum tube, so that explains the smaller size in all the computers and why you have a phone that has long-lasting battery. And Moore's law it's still in effect today, and it's not going to stop. Like, you can tell, like, now you have computers that will talk to you and tell you face recognition and fingerprint scanners in your phone, and that's not going to stop. They're going to keep going until they can't anymore. And that is the history of computers.
Yeah.